Welcome to Conversation with Buddy. I'm your host, Buddy Puckett. Today we're going to be talking about three things, marriage and mentoring, which we always talk about. And today we're going to talk about money. I've got a guest today. He's a financial advisor. He's probably much more than that. His name is Mark Bain. Welcome, Mark.
Hey, welcome. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So Mark's going to do a little disclosure because he's a financial guy. He's got to get compliance. But go ahead and read your little
compliance. Got to keep the compliance people happy. So I'm a managing director, senior wealth advisor at Bain Wealth Management and investment advisory services offered through CWM LLC, an SEC registered investment advisor. Carson Partners, a division of CWM LLC, is a nationwide partnership of advisors. There we go.
Thank you, Mark. That's awesome. You got to be in compliance. I'm the
got to be in compliance
world too, so I totally understand that. Well, Mark, we're going to talk about lots of things today, but let's just start off with this here. Since we're going to be talking a lot about money.
Okay.
What are maybe the three mistakes people make with money? Let's just start off with what people do wrong.
I think one of the biggest mistakes is not knowing about it and just blindly moving forward. So they get into debt, make bad financial decisions. So I think lack of education right out of the gate is one I would mention.
Okay.
I think not being clear on your values and what's important to you.
Okay.
Therefore, what's driving your decisions on what you're spending money on and what you're doing. So there needs to be, my approach is holistic financial planning. So that means there's a purpose to what we're trying to do. And if you're lacking a plan, well, why would I do that or buy this truck or move over here? So I think there's those kind of things. Certainly people can get into trouble with debt. There's a lot of individual circumstances that we've seen clients in from broken relationships and businesses that fall apart, or there's things that happen along the way too, and that can be through no fault of your own sometimes financially.
Right.
Whole range of things really.
So it sounds like three things. People are lacking education. Mm-hmm. They're not clear on their goals or values.
Right.
And they often just buy things. Probably if I know people, and I do, we're pretty emotional.
A lot of emotional spenders,
and we buy
right?
that car that, the average car now is like over $800 a month.
Yeah.
So we buy things on emotion.
Yep.
So it's good to have a guy like you that can go, hey, is that part of your long-term plan? Is that maybe a question you'd ask? Like, hey, cool, you can buy a car if you want, but is that part of your long-term plan for retirement, for debt management, and buying a house or whatever it is?
For sure. It's really, for us, it's more of getting down and what are your values? What are your goals? What does finding your freedom mean to you? What are you trying to do for a legacy? What are you trying to accomplish? What's success to you in the next 10 years? It's questions like that. And then we get to say, okay, let's develop a plan to get there.
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean tracking each and every penny on what you're doing and not going over $880 a month or something. Yeah. But it does mean having the end in mind. And so that puts a strategy together. And frankly, people get inspired and get fired up about working to pay off debt so they can have a zero debt in starting retirement, getting some dollars saved so that they can not run out of money 3 years after they retire and have some security that way, and their spending and their goals. It's really a partner. I view ourselves as a partner with every client, and just life decisions. And as life happens, that's the bulk of our relationship. And then money happens to be a tool that we use.
Cool. Well, hey, that's how we're going to start off today. But let me introduce Mark real quick, because normally I read off of a script but I know Mark. I've known you
a long time.
For 20 plus years, I'm pretty sure.
Yep.
I was thinking about this morning, we actually have a lot in common.
Yeah.
We went to the same church for probably 20 plus years.
Yeah.
We both have two daughters. You've been married for 30 plus years.
30 years, just this month.
Just this month, 30 years.
Yep.
So we'll talk about that. That's pretty cool, by the way.
Yeah, thanks.
You're in the money game, the financial world. Let's see, what else about you? How many siblings do you have?
I have two siblings, one brother and one sister. My brother is in Albany. He's a family doctor there. He's lived and breathed football, most of his life. He's now retired from that. His kids are now moved on, from that chapter. And my sister's in Texas, and she's got almost 17 and almost 15-year-olds, so a little bit younger. My sister's 7 years behind me.
So to clarify, you're the oldest?
I am the oldest.
Okay, I always like to know who I'm dealing with, because firstborn,
that's
secondborn,
all the whole firstborn
middle
side,
child.
Right?
Okay. It's interesting. I'm a secondborn, and so it's I find it fascinating, just the firstborn, secondborn, middle child.
Yeah, that and personality things are really cool. Yeah.
Well, so let's talk about a little bit maybe personality.
Okay.
Tell me about how you grew up as a firstborn child with 2 other siblings. What was parents like?
Yeah.
How did that make you who you are today? And are you driven? Would you say you're a driven type
I am, yeah. I think we grew up in a pretty much a sports house, so you knew what to do with the ball. I was football, basketball, track, and my brother and my dad coached. So that was like all the way through, yeah.
Okay. So where'd you grow up at?
We grew up in Montana. So we were up in a number of places. The last 4 years, we're up in northeast Montana in a town called Wolf Point. And we moved out to Oregon in 79. So that was, I was 10. And it tells my age, doesn't it? But then we've been in Oregon, really, Oregon and Washington for college and back to Oregon is the journey there. But yeah, so my parents were not believers when I was born, but then became believers and were new believers raising us.
Okay. So what high school did you go to?
Went to Salem Academy High School. So I went 4th grade through 12th grade at Salem Academy.
Nice. That's a good place to go to school.
Yeah, it was much smaller. I think it's gotten a lot, COVID, I think private school boomed. But we had probably 50 in a class. And I think Christian Center Academy was another, I think that's where Blanchette is now. That was a school that closed. So we took a huge influx of kids for my senior year. So we went to 88 students. So that's a pretty big jump from 50. And so I graduated with 88. But there's really 50 in a class prior to my senior year.
Nice. Small, probably
small school.
Close to a lot of those people still?
Not really. No, I've got a couple. I just one of my best friends. He was the best man at my wedding. We had dinner on Saturday with them, and we stay in touch that way.
Nice.
Not a whole lot though. We sort of went off to college and that kind of thing. I think I've only made one reunion, not because I've avoided it, but because we've had conflicts with vacation and whatnot when those have come up. So,
all right. So you graduated from high school, went to college. So where'd you go to college?
Yeah.
When did you meet your wife?
Yeah.
And then we'll talk about kids and then apparently grandkids.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Soon to be, right?
Yeah.
So, I went to PLU, Pacific Lutheran University. Coming out, I was looking at a number of schools for football, really. And then Frosty Westering was the coach there. He's now passed on, but he was truly amazing, one of a kind. Went up and got to play football for PLU, played for 3 years there, injured my knee, so that kind of ended that. I met my wife. I'm 2 years, almost 3 years older, but 2 grades ahead of her, so I met her my junior year. And you could kind of say the rest is history. I was pretty well smitten there, so.
That's awesome. So you met her in college.
Yep.
So where was Karen from? Was she from here as well?
No, she's from San Jose. So she was her dad. We just lost him, last year.
Yeah.
But he had been in IBM. He, down in Silicon Valley in San Jose, and they're a remarkable. He's probably the biggest influence in a male role in my life on how to live Christ.
No kidding.
And he retired at 55. Which I look back and I'm like, wow, that'd be you and me retiring.
Right now.
I guess I love what I do. So there's that. But retired there. We were going down and then they moved up to Bend.
Yeah.
So we got to do a lot of, like when the girls were really little. So I got 2 daughters, Kayla and Kimberly, and we'd take them over to Bend, usually a week at Christmas, play in the snow and that kind of thing. And then as they got older, that got to be kind of clunky because we're like volleyball, basketball, track, and club sports. And so you're on the go as they got even into travel basketball in middle school, right? So you're just busy, and you've had kids, and anybody with kids with sports, that's what gym are we in tonight kind of thing. And so they were having that's 2.5 hours from Bend and that kind of thing. So they ended up moving over to Salem, and that they were those grandparents, right? Nana and Opa, and I don't think they missed a game for either of our kids. It was remarkable. So all the players on the team, the coaches, everybody knew them. Nana and Opa, they're always here cheering, and Opa knew all the stats. It was pretty fun.
That's pretty cool.
Yep.
So What'd you graduate with from college? What was your degree in?
Here will be an interesting deal.
I would assume finance, but maybe...
No, that would be what everybody assumes. I was undecided for 3.5 years. I was playing football, kind of figuring life out. I ended up graduating in graphic design. So yeah, that was my initial deal. And I worked... have a number of jobs that don't align with this industry, but I did that for almost 10 years, graphic design.
Oh, you did do that for 10 years?
And then made a curve and started with Bain Wealth Management in 98. And actually, I'll give you a side note on that. My wife, Karen, is a business major, and she and I both, you're starting out, you're in debt, you're renting, car payments, credit card payments. I had student loans. You're upside down, really, right? So just figuring those things out. And then she went and worked with my dad at Bain Wealth Management 2 years before me.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah, a lot of people don't know that.
Oh, that's funny.
And she actually started as an advisor, got her Series 7, got all licensed, the whole 9 yards.
So she started in 1996?
Yep.
Wow.
Yeah.
She's been doing it for a few days.
Yeah, for a minute.
Okay.
And then I was working, actually, my last job was up in Wilsonville for Atlas Telecom, a company that was going bankrupt.
Yeah.
And I'll give you a side note here. We were in a church in Kaiser, and we had an amazing small group. Greg Hall was in Salem.
Yeah.
He's somebody that you probably know. And he was our small group leader. And going through that could have been a lot of stress and anxiety, because they did 5 rounds of layoffs. And I think I was the last one in our marketing department to stay, probably because I was a jack of all trades. Like the guy doing video was the first guy to go. They were peeling off. And so because I was kind of multifaceted, not really the best in any one thing, I attribute that, or maybe I'm amiable to more people or something. Right. But yeah, I was like the final round, but you knew it was coming. Yeah. And so we just brought it before our group. We were praying. And I just remember at that time, through God's word, we just had a peace, and it was time to pivot. And following that, I ended up coming to Bain Wealth Management. So God had a plan. And, but yeah, Karen then had Kayla, and hasn't worked as an advisor since then, but she sort of took a back seat, but then came back in late 2000s, and she's been running the books. She's I'd call it my warrior, got my back, my soulmate.
That's cool.
But so she's been there the whole time, but then taken over the books and HR and everything. So she prefers that and has no plans of going back in on the financial advisor side. But
how many siblings does Karen have?
One. Michael.
Older or younger?
Older. So Michael's my year in school, and Karen's 2 years behind me.
Okay, so firstborn marries a secondborn.
Yeah, there you go.
There's my argument. I always talk to my girls about this whole, because it's funny.
Yeah.
It's not that firstborns can't marry, firstborns and secondborns can't marry. It's just not typical. Mm-hmm. So I'm a secondborn. My wife's a firstborn.
Yeah.
So case in point.
Yep.
Let's talk about what's interesting. So you have the 3 Ks, Karen, Kayla, and Kimberly. I only know her as Kimmy, though.
I know. I still sometimes call her Kimmy. For a while, she was going by Kim, goes by Kimberly.
When you say Kimberly, I don't know who Kimberly is.
I know. I still call her Kimmy quite a bit, but she'd been going through Kim and Kimberly for quite a while. John, my son-in-law, calls her Kimberly.
Okay.
So I'm getting better about trying to use, but she's still my little Kimmy, right?
Yeah. Daddy's girl, man.
Daddy's girl. I got 2 daddy's girls, for sure.
So how'd you guys come up with the names? Was it just a play off of Karen's name? She's
we kind of liked, order. I don't know, synergy there. Nobody wants Shaniqua. I suggested that one, and it didn't fly.
Shaniqua,
and Michael Jordan wouldn't fly for a girl like Mikkel. So
exactly.
No, I'm just joking. But I don't know. We kind of we did Kayla, Christine, and Kimberly Nicole is what we did, and they've gone with their last name as a middle. As they've taken their spouse's name. So
no kidding. Their last name is a middle now.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Karen did that too. She was Karen Christine and went to Karen Graham Bain.
Yeah.
Her maiden's name's Graham.
Hey,
so whatever works,
whatever
right?
honors the line,
But they go by Oliver and Talon,
Yeah.
And proudly so.
Okay, so how long after college did you guys get married, and then how long until kids came along?
So Yeah, I was a 4.5-year plan at school,
was 5,
just playing,
so I get
playing
that.
football, right? And Karen was 4, and so interesting side note, we were dating, and this will be interesting to your younger viewers. She did a study abroad that wasn't nearly as popular as it is now.
Oh, yeah.
Europe, and did that for 3 months. And back then, I was broke. So, I mean, phone calls, we had a couple, but they were really expensive.
Things were a little differently back then.
No cell phone, no
Nothing.
texting. I mean, zero, right?
Yeah.
And so we wrote letters, physical letters, and you'd probably get a couple of letters written and sent by the time you get one in the sequence.
Yeah.
So you had to do that dance for about 3 months. And then we did have about, probably 3 phone calls, if I remember right. But yeah, made it through there and knew we wanted to get married. And her folks were paying for her school.
Okay.
But if she gets married, that's on me to pay for her school.
I love it. So I can't wait till my girls got married, man. Yeah.
So we opted to wait till she graduated to get married. So it was the summer after she graduated.
Hey, it's a financial decision right there.
Yeah. So we were married in 1994.
Okay. Yeah.
And 2024. Here we go.
Man, 30 years.
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, then you have a couple daughters.
Mm-hmm.
What's it like being a girl dad? I'm a girl dad too, so I get you.
I think for me it was easy, and I mean that. I'm a verbal. You and I know each other. There's kind of, you like these rules too, the 20-80 rule, right?
Yes,
There's 80% of men have 3 words a day and a lot of action, and 80% of the women share all their words. Well, Karen and I are almost both in the 20%. So I'm a very verbal. I'll talk people to death. I'll talk Karen's ear off as my soulmate.
Yeah.
And I need to work on listening. And she's more action and talks one-on-one, but certainly is not an extrovert and things like that.
Okay,
so
she's an introvert, you're extrovert.
Yeah, for sure.
Got it.
And so
that's funny.
Yeah, it is funny how that kind of plays in. Now I forgot your question again.
I don't remember. The question, so personality profile, what's interesting, I think, especially for married people, is I was 50 before I actually began to really study personality profiles.
Oh, wow. Okay. Late.
Now, I'd done them before, but
not in,
a disc profile and in sales, but what about in marriage? And so do you and Karen have a certain type of personality profile test that you guys like to take to help each other in marriage?
Good question. I don't know about specifically to marriage. I've been very into personalities. So has she. I mean, back in the day, you did marriage counseling looks so different than it does today for premarital. We've done some premarital where it's more very relational. Back then, it was sort of cookie cutter, and it's some old pastor, and it was her pastor, and neither of us had a real relationship. But I do remember, boy, we each took Myers-Briggs, and we had some, I think we were opposites on all of them, and especially on the P and the J, so that we had a lot. We joke in some of our premarital, we had a rocky first year of marriage as a result of that. I think she had expectations that were quite high and different than who I am and whatnot, and I had expectations. And, Paul Tripp says it well, right? The problem with your marriage is you got 2 sinners in there and trying to figure it out. But
right.
God's been good, and we've learned how to each come towards the middle and sort of soften on areas and grow on other areas. And we've learned what are each of our strengths and what are our weaknesses, and we work. It's amazing how God, it takes some knocking heads, but then you are stronger and better. Yeah.
Well, it's funny. We don't often marry somebody like us. We wouldn't want that. So we marry
2 of the exact same stuff.
We're attracted to somebody who's actually opposite us. Yeah. Then we get married and we go, hey, we feel like there's something wrong with this picture. Like you're so much different.
Right.
But that's the whole attraction.
Yep.
So, but figuring out how to work through that and realize you appreciate the things about Karen that you don't have, and she appreciates the things about you that she doesn't have. That's why it works.
Amen.
So, well, that's good, man. In your marriage, you've been perfect ever since that first year.
Oh, absolutely. Perfect.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
No, we have, like I said, that first 1 or 2 years, and I won't do them on the podcast, but we've got a lot of fighting over the dishes and whether we should go out and have something fun and do the dishes later or not, which can, I think that's a good example of what can turn into a volcano and an epic conversation or argument. And in hindsight, it's a trivial matter, but in the heat of the moment, it could be on the toothbrush and the toothpaste, I mean, so you just have to, and I think that's being real and helping prepare people for marriage. You're going to now live together, and that's different than dating where I'm seeing Buddy's best or I'm seeing Karen's best.
Yeah.
Or, and so, I think, and I think the one thing I would point to is both of us we're in this under God and for better or for worse, and God's first. And so it just takes humility. It takes saying, I'm sorry. It takes apologizing and coming back and keeping God first rather than your own stuff.
Yeah. I take a lot of notes from people who have been married for a long time just because I want to learn. And one of the things I've learned, I heard yesterday from a couple, and you know these people too, they've been married for 48 years, I think.
Oh, wow.
But from the wife, having a sense of humor.
Yeah.
When
gotta have humor.
Yeah. When I always say I'm the knucklehead of the family, it's me.
Yeah.
And my wife knows that.
Yeah.
And sometimes she just shakes her head and she can now laugh. It took her a long time before she could laugh at my knuckleheadedness. What I do, what I noticed about marriage, you get fight over the toothpaste or who didn't put the cap on.
Right.
That isn't the problem. A lot of times it's layered with other things. And if you don't unlayer these things every day and every moment, it builds up. And pretty soon we're mad about something, but we don't even actually know what it's about.
Yeah.
You ever notice that?
You avoid the real issue, right?
Yeah. So how have you undone the layering of the onion to get to maybe the core? What would you say? Because financial planning is like that too.
It is in some ways. Yeah. Not in the same intimate way, right? With that, but it is in the same relational way. Yeah, it really is. So it's identifying what those issues are. And frankly, we came in both needing godly influence. I mean, I've had a number of godly men, and she's had mentors, and she was actually saved, grew up Lutheran, but was saved in college at a church that she and I were attending right off campus, a little Calvary chapel.
So you guys were dating.
Oh, we were dating. We were both. I was a believer. I thought she was a believer, but I wasn't living it really to be so. Yeah, I grew up. I was a Christian since I was just under 5, and by the time I had kind of gotten out of Salem, I wasn't coming back, and I was playing football and having a blast, but I wasn't living out my faith. I was very up, down, up, down. And then when she and I started dating, it was a little bit of a wake-up call. It's like, I've got to be a leader. It's that side, because this isn't just infatuation. And so I didn't really know what that looked like. So we were at this small church, and they poured into us, and she had grown up Lutheran and knew a lot of the stuff, but didn't have a personal relationship. So thankful for that pastor and that season, and that was sweet. So we're both believers, and shortly after, we're getting married, and then trying to figure that stuff out, like the layers. So some of it is just recognizing that, like you said, you're a knucklehead or an idiot, right? And that's me sometimes. Yeah. And I still think even today, we've been married 30 years. Very often I would view her as my filter. We've served together in a lot of capacities, led whether it's mission trips or serving in high school youth group or those kind of things. I'm one that kind of needs a filter. I can just fly and talk and go off the seat of my pants and make jokes. And that's a little bit more my speed. Yeah. And sometimes that's not best.
I always say sarcasm is my second language, and I need to. I'm
quick with a smile and a joke and those things, and you just need to make sure you're. And it's not that it's inappropriate; it's too strong of a word, but you want to make sure you're doing things in a godly way, and she and I are together and in unity. So then your question on how we do that, I think there was about 3 different marriage conferences we went to that have been very instrumental in our lives, because you come back saying, here's some tools, here's some things for the wife, here's some things for the husband, here's how you guys can communicate better, communication skills, conflict resolution, keeping Christ. So there's just various times where you kind of need to reset. And to me, those, along with, from Bible study fellowship, or she's been in parts of women's discipleship, and I've been men's discipleship, where people pour into you. And then being able to come together. And sometimes there's that, like you said it well, right, where we're bucking heads, and we kind of know there's an issue, but nobody's wanting to talk about it. And then, and that's one that I'm a very feelings-oriented male.
Yeah.
So those are particularly rough on me. It's rough on her too, but then we just need to come together and oftentimes you might weep or, or change habits, and I'm a big fan of saying, look, I got to shed more of Mark and put more of Christ on. And I'm still not there, but I'm a lot further along than I was when I was 20.
Well, at least you're aware. I mean, we're not going to be perfect until God
we
calls
absolutely
us home,
won't, right?
But we're a work in process, and we're aware. We know that we actually have blind spots, and so when our wives call us out, we actually go, okay, I'll listen. Yeah. Like I don't always like to listen to my. Oh,
I love listening. What are you talking
do you really? No. Tell me more, Mark.
I am a talker, so I work at listening.
Yeah. What? Okay, as you led your wife and your daughters, what are the ways you led your family? Number one, and then what are some of the marriage conferences you went to that maybe someone listening might want to go to? Do you have one in mind?
It's been a number of years now. Ramey's, I think, are one that was 20 years ago, maybe. I mean, we're talking 15, 20 years ago, so names of them.
It's been a while.
Dude, I'm getting old to try and remember. But they were just biblical, faith-based conferences. Yeah. I think a couple of them in Eugene. Names of them escape me. But where it's not the magic of the speaker. I mean, it's 3 days and you're out of your environment. You're in a hotel. You got stuff to work on. You work on it back at the hotel and dinner, and then you come back the next day, and they'll bring in some different relationship experts and marriage experts, and they just get real. So I've not been to a Paul Tripp conference, but he's certainly one I've listened a lot to. Okay. I relate well with him. I think a lot of guys do. Yeah. Timothy Keller, one of my favorites. He's passed, but I still listen to his podcast very frequently. I'm going to not be a whiz of information for you here on that.
Well, I think what you said though is doesn't really matter as long as it's a biblically based conference that you're going and you're working through stuff.
Right.
I mean, it's kind of like playing football.
Yeah.
Right.
It is.
You have to practice a lot.
Yep.
Before you go play the game.
Yeah. You don't just show up.
In marriage, sometimes we show up and we haven't practiced it.
Amen.
Maybe practicing would be praying, reading our Bible.
Yeah.
Spend time with the Lord in the morning.
Yep.
And I can tell when I have or have not.
Yeah, it'll set the table for the day. But I think more importantly, oftentimes I found, I know we need some tools and skills that we didn't necessarily have. So a lot of times around difficult communication, conflict resolution, parenting style. And I tell you what, you asked about pouring into the girls. So I'm I was a youth counselor at Camp Hammer in college, right? And I was the fun guy. And I remember just getting torn up by this kid who came in, and it was his first time away from home and all that. And I was just patient, but I was pulling my hair out. I was exhausted. This kid to discipline, and I felt like it was a train wreck of a week. And then what I found out later, his parents praised the camp counselor who said, "Hey, this was so good for him." And I'm like, when I was alone, I just kind of wept. I'm like, I felt like I failed. Because I didn't get him to fit in with the other kids. I just kept working with him, and I was frustrated. So I'm at that moment not feeling like I was accomplishing much of anything. But I bring that up because God can use us in ways that aren't the way you think. Right? And I think there's Mission Trip 101. I think I'm going to go down here to Mexico, and we're going to share the gospel, and we're bringing kids to Christ, and it's really going to benefit them. They're lucky to have me, right? There's an American attitude.
Oh, yeah.
And I'll tell you what, I've gotten more personally and challenged and stretched and used in ways that is just pure God. You cannot take any credit for. So parenting to me was that too. I think for me, it was rough because I didn't really have a model I was trying to repeat. I was trying to be a godly man and husband and not knowing what that looked like, a lot of trial and error. So we have faithfully attended church. We read the Bible, and with both our daughters, I would go through James and go through John and go through studies. We'd pray every night. I think one thing we did Because I never liked as a kid, hey, buddy, you're the dad and I'm the kid. And why? Just because dad said so or mom said so.
Because I said so.
Yeah, and not getting a why. And so I kind of came in with a chip on my shoulder. So every single time my kids would ask why, I'd sit down and give them an answer. And that was a high priority. And sometimes in the moment in a store or something, we're going to talk about this at home. That night, we're going to have a conversation. And yes, I got abused sometimes. I'm tucking Kayla or Kimberly into bed, and we're having story time and reading our Bible, and then questions because they want to stay up. And you know what? I think a speaker somewhere along the way say, if your child is giving you a glimpse into their soul, you take it.
Man.
So I took that to heart. And sometimes, it gets abused in the other way too. So
those are beautiful words, a glimpse into their soul. I'm going to have to...
Well, that's not my words. That's just when I'm parroting back. You got to steal good ideas and share them,
Well, that's what being a dad is about. Love it's an action. It's not a feeling. Hey, I feel like loving you today.
That's infatuation.
Exactly. But love is an action. And I think when God gives you the opportunity to speak to your girls and teach them the word, you're like, I'm all in.
Yeah.
Fully committed. And now you have beautiful daughters that are married. You got son-in-laws. How does that feel like?
I'll tell you what, that I am blessed beyond I deserve at where I'm at in life, and because I have not lived a perfect life, that's just
really?
By the grace of God. Well, buddy, but no, I think back, just what a blessing to have a family. We're all close. And so as adults, they haven't kicked us to the curb, and that's a real God blessing, and it's a tribute to their walk with Christ. I think giving Kayla away, and frankly, I had known Jared. I mean, they started dating right after their freshman year of high school.
Seriously.
So he was in the cause, my D team. I had a pretty long relationship all through high school with him, and really was able to connect with him, pour into his life, and what a blessing, because that could have bucked heads, frankly, in some ways. So that's a God tribute there. But I think walking your daughter down the aisle, and I know you've done that, it's you got to fight back tears at the rehearsal. It's rough. And I would say, well, two things. I think I think back to Kayla's wedding in 2019. Yeah. We did a meaningful half of a song, father-daughter dance, and then we bust out CNC Music Factory. Everybody dance now, and that's, to be honest, that's a highlight of the wedding for me for this reason. Kayla wanted to do it.
Yeah.
And it's all over Facebook. I'm embarrassed, and all that. But it's like we did a choreographed thing, and that was so awesome that we could have that moment on her wedding day. Yeah. And then I am so proud of Jared. And then I just go to a year ago, June. So it's only been 13 months. Kimberly and John, and the Lord had brought them together. And for that one, Kimberly and I were talking about that. So do we want to do a 2.0 on that? And we didn't want to do that. So it was a surprise to me. Day of the wedding, I didn't know what it was going to be. She did a song called Dad by Tyler Wood. And I don't know if you know that song, but I had never heard it. And I've listened to it a lot now, but she said, this is how I think of you. And I had a hard time not crying. And we just did a full song and a dance. And I have a thing, she gave me a little plaque to put on my desk. So those two moments, the wedding days were amazing, but those are moments that for me were special because my daughters wanted to make it special. Yeah. And I got to share that. But giving them away to two godly men, Jared and John, I just feel remarkably blessed.
JK.
JK.
Come on.
Bring it.
That is so cool. What an honor to give our daughters away to a godly man,
Well, and we'd been
I was going to say, you've been praying.
Karen and I have prayed every day of our daughters' lives. I'm literally for that godly husband. Another piece I did was before having kids, this was one of the wedding conferences, but I wrote a birthday letter every year starting at 1 and gave it to them when they each were 18. In a box, kind of a special deal. So
no kidding.
Just what I've been praying for, what I'm hoping for, what I've seen in their life. And in fact, I was just talking to Kayla last week. She had pulled that out because she's getting ready to have a baby and just was remarking on what I had seen in her. And her comment that really stuck with me was, you didn't talk about work. You didn't talk about money. You didn't talk about business in these letters. You talked about me and Christ and what you saw. And I'm like, oh, praise the Lord.
I know.
Because that's not my flesh that would have naturally done those things. So it is. It's a choice and a decision and an action with love. I love what you said, buddy.
Yeah. You've done a great job, raising daughters and loving on them, obviously not perfect.
Not perfect, no.
Two imperfect parents raising imperfect, children.
Yep.
But God's grace is sufficient.
It is.
His power is perfected in weakness. We know that verse.
Yeah.
Okay, so do you remember way back when Pastor Ron would say, hey, if I knew how fun grandkids were, I'd bypass the kids and go right to the grandkids?
I totally remember that. I do. Yep.
So tell me about what this feeling is like having a grandbaby coming.
We are jacked. I'm serious. We had our nursery ready before Kayla and Jared, and it was fun. I mean, they're obviously very ready. They had Kimberly and I come out and paint the wall in their nursery, and we had done that with our kids. I painted our nursery, so that was just.
I remember you guys'.
Oh yeah,
I do. In your
the
West Ham
ABC
home,
and the Winnie the Pooh and all that.
Yeah.
So we did theirs. It's more of a woods kind of a theme and that kind of thing, trees. But yeah, so that's something Kimberly and I could do together, and Kayla and Jared. We're excited about this season, and excited to be able to be right now, Nani and Pop. We're not going to go by Grandma and Grandpa.
Yeah,
we'll see what the baby says.
Yeah,
that's going to be what drives the bus. But no, I couldn't be more excited. We are. I would not necessarily fully align with Pastor Ron saying skip the parenting. We had some hard moments. I've had to apologize to my kids. I think any young dads out there need to hear that. There's times where you're going to need to apologize to your kids. Yeah. Be a man. That's important. They need to see all of that. But now that we get to just celebrate this next chapter, to coming along and helping them, with whatever that's going to be, watching them, pouring into them, and being a part of their lives, what a blessing. Yeah.
Well, what you talk about as a man is, we think we're men. We carry the sword around. We're just whacking things. And our daughters and our wives need to see the man, but they also need to see us put down the sword and be that tender guy, the dad and the husband, that kind, tender, loving.
It's husbands love your wives, women respect your husbands. It's that love and respect. So
in that order.
For a lot of men, we like to say we're the provider, we're taking care of, I'm protecting, and it's the sword you talked about. And that's important. I've got my kids back in no way, shape, or form, no question. But they don't only need to see that. You need to be tender and vulnerable and love and represent Christ. They're who, for better or worse, you as the dad are going to be who they see Christ as and who they see their future their husband as. Yeah. And if that doesn't scare the crap out of you, you're arrogant, because that scares me still, because I know I'm not perfect. Yeah. And I know that they know I'm not perfect, but I'm always trying to point him to Christ. I think that's the thing. It's not because Mark said so. It's let's look at what the scripture says about this. Beautiful. And let's kind of engage that way. So yeah, it's not just a sword. That's an important piece. You are the protector, provider. But it's if you miss that love, you've missed it as a dad. And we've got a lot of absentee dads, and that's a thing I'm pretty passionate about, is helping young guys I mentor at our church and try and pour into and really try to encourage, because I know how hard that is. There's times where your sanity is checked. The other prayer, you mentioned Pastor Ron, the other prayer I remember on one of his Logos nights.
I love Logos.
Yeah, where it's studying the word, right? But he would come home from a busy day at work. He'd have whatever sales, because I think at that time he was insurance or something, but rough day, beaten up. And then you come home and you got trikes and mess and kids screaming, and you're going to have to enter this house. So he'd sit in the car, and you might remember this.
I already know how you're going to finish
Before he gets out of the car, he just prays, Lord, help. That's
Lord
it.
Help. Lord, how many times I've said Lord help?
Yeah, I've said it.
Because of Pastor Ron.
Because of that. And it's so true, Lord, because it's the groanings. The Holy Spirit will make sense of our heart. We don't have to have all the words for that. We can just say, Lord, help, and have that Holy Spirit come and equip you in a way that if it's only about me, I don't got time for this.
Yeah. Lord help.
Lord help.
Man, I sure miss Pastor Ron.
I do too. So thanks for bringing him up. No, that's sweet memories.
When did you guys start going to Salem Heights? When was that?
Oh, gosh. That's in the 90s. We actually had, a quick it's always debatable, right? Because we came to Salem, we tried several churches, and some of it, you go to the church you're in high school, it's, oh, Mark, the football player, football family, and I kind of was sick of that, a little bit. So we ended up going to Salem Heights. We did about 4 years, and then we built in Kaiser, built our first home. Yeah. And we're like, that's too far to drive across town. I was working up towards Wilsonville, so we ended up going to another church up there. And then it took us a couple of years, but we're like, you know what? We're just not quite getting fed. It was a very, I guess you and I might call it seeker sensitive. It was a fun, dynamic church, but we weren't cracking open the Bible on Sunday mornings. And so we ended up having to leave that church, and we're kind of sheepish about coming back to Salem Heights because we'd left, and it's like you're a little bit embarrassed. So we tried about 6 or 8 churches, and then finally we came back in. We were up at the old chapel still at that point. Yeah, I remember, man. And Pastor Ron just brought a thundering message like he always does, and we're like, yeah, we're back.
We're back.
It was, so we were there about 20 years, but you got to count a little gap there. So we were kind of 4 years pre-kids, and then we were gone, and then we were back, and then that was through about 2020.
Funny. Yeah, sounds very similar. We started probably 1999 or 2000, and so hey, let's end on this note here because I know God takes us in different directions, and you guys are now at a new church.
We are
doing some ministry. You're an elder. Talk about that. Let's talk about what Mark's doing, what God's doing in your life.
Yeah,
for you and Karen.
Yeah, I think some of it, your chapter, we had been almost sprinting on a treadmill of serving. And I mean that in a positive way, but we were serving Karen was in a Moms in Prayer. We were serving at the Cause High School Youth Group. We had obviously the sports, Kayla, Kimmy. We had done quite a number of mission trips, a lot of them to Mexico, and a couple others outside of that. So we'd been and we had a breakfast club we did for about 6 years.
Like 50 kids or something like that.
That was the peak, yeah. And that's just God, because that's, in spite of us, we get to have a little devotion before school. So I think that chapter had kind of wound down. Our kids, Kayla's off to college, getting married. Kimmy was done. And so we were praying about, Lord, we're not done. So what do you have for us? That was some of our prayer. And some of it's just the timing of COVID. And so it's interesting. So our journey, again, kind of our planner hat was we'd been in a home in West Salem, and we're sort of done with that chapter. We were looking to downsize and just build a home that would just be one level. I'm thinking ahead. I don't want to be like hobbling upstairs. So we were going to build a one level and a downsized home. God really, a couple of things here. Well, first I'll tell you the plan. The plan was to do that, to move in there and then just kind of find an avenue to serve, which we didn't know what that would be, and kind of empty nest. Boom. That's sort of
life is good.
What parents think about, oh, that'll be empty nesting and we can travel and that kind of stuff. Well, number one, we really got the lot we got. Day it was listed, it was about $50,000 below. I go out there because I was looking, and there was 3 people taking pictures, and I had Karen come out with me, and so we did an all cash offer and got it that day because it would have just gone. Yeah. So we ended up building there, and because of the slope, we ended up having to you'd get it downstairs,
daylight basement,
and and along the way we had a young couple. We'd known the Chicas for a long time. So Anna Chica and Michael Litke, they were just getting married, and they're not sure where they're going to live initially. Couldn't buy a house. So we had talked to them about, we're going to be empty nesting. You guys could live with us for a short season and save up and then buy a house. So we had that plan. But then what happened is so the house ended up being a lot bigger, not really by our design, but it's our forever home. And so that was going to be a plan. Kimberly pulled out of playing volleyball at Western Oregon and came back home, and that was not a path for her to continue, and that's part of her journey. But now she's going to live with us for a season. Yeah. And then with COVID, Kayla and Jared still were they got married and still had, their last year of college at Whitworth. They came back to Salem. So initially they were living in a trailer at his mom's in the driveway for a few months.
Wow, that's challenging.
Because we got, so that was close quarters. And then our home, we moved in July of 2020. So we ended up with an instant house of 7. And if you remember at the time, lockdowns were no more than 5 in a house and everything shut down. And
COVID doesn't affect anybody if there's less than 5 people, Mark.
Yeah, that, right? I don't want to get too political, but
okay.
that was a tough time, right? So, but I'll tell you what, that wasn't our empty nesting that we envisioned. But so we had the married couples downstairs in the young married's frat house, if you will, and then Kimberly's upstairs. And we had different, and this is not like kids. So you had one couple doing dinner one night a week, another couple doing dinner, Kimberly doing a dinner, and then Karen and I doing a dinner, and just sharing life, pouring into each other. And so that ended up being the sweetest time for us. And to be truthful, Karen and I are a little bit conscious about what we eat. So it's typically grilled meat and veggies and a salad. Well, we're doing carbs. We're doing, and it got to be a competition. I mean,
we're going to outdo you. Yeah.
Well, yeah, it's like when they're cooking steaks, or they're like Kimmy had a taco bar on the whole table, and Jared's got his steaks, and then they got Greek food, and so amazing. It was almost like one-upping everybody, and then just a lot of opportunity to sit around and pour into them about life and marriage and those kind of things. So that was not what we designed, but God knew best. And that's absolutely what happened. And during that time, too, through a different set of circumstances, the Chicas were starting their restored biblical counseling ministry. And so we were on the board with them. There's 4 couples that were going to be supporting that. We were all in. And then with the lockdowns, we basically had, several families and then our kids' families. So we ended up having these small weekly Bible studies is what we were doing. And then we started having, at a home, you start having 30, 40 people, when you're hoping the neighbors don't call and stuff like that. Yeah. So we finally kind of came to a point where we outgrew our space and then we started renting a little place in Independence. Yeah. And then it just kept growing. And then we had to ask ourselves that following year, are we a church? Because we didn't intend that at all. But yet we had all these people that were wanting part of what this community was. And so, we kind of started then Restored Fellowship, the church. Okay. And so,
the Restored Ministry and then also Restored
Restored Ministry, which is now called Restored Soul Care. So that's just a nonprofit 501(c) biblical counseling. And Carl and Laura and a few others, they're out training, and it's worldwide. They got Europe. It's
crazy.
It's God's just landing things in their plate and using them in a way to help equip and train others to minister biblically. But then also our church it's a young church. We've got a lot of young marrieds and young couples. About a quarter of our church are Western Oregon students. Yeah,
beautiful.
Yeah, those aren't people that are hanging around Mark because I'm cool, hip, and young. I mean,
Right.
But it's been a real journey, and to be honest with you, I had strong faith coming in, but God absolutely grew our faith over this in a couple of ways. I think number one, having a space and then getting another building, and now we're in a third building, recognizing that we don't have to financially plan this. And that's where I have to take my work hat off and just put on my faith hat and just follow with what God puts for you to do and have faith and confidence that He's going to bring that. And my view on church growth and things, I think, has markedly shifted, because now it's not that I'm taking a passive role by any means, but I'm not taking we're grabbing the bull by the horns and solving the problem role. Right. And I think that was a big step for me. And my wife and I were business owners. That. So that was it was a good growth. And then the other stretch, I've done a lot of facilitating and breakfast club and men's groups and mission trips, but that's different. As an elder, I've been asked to preach a few times a year on a Sunday morning, and I'm still intimidated by that. I don't view myself as a preacher. But that's been a blessing and something to really cause some serious growth in me too. Yeah. I still would say that's not my preference, but I tend to be more of let's get in a group and a community and talk and that. But because to do 40 minutes of a monologue I'm more relational oriented. Totally. So that does stretch me still. But there's just a lot of young marrieds. We're talking 30-year-olds and 20-year-olds. And so we kind of started gathering at homes and having some fun games and just, we have married people that have been married 30 years, so we can mix and pour into each other's lives. And it brings old people like me life too, the youth and just the challenge and just iron sharpens iron. And one of your favorite verses, it's pouring into God's word together in community. So I think of that word community is like capital C. Those are my people.
Yeah.
So God's used us in that way. And then we kind of thought that chapter's winding down. Back to our house. Kayla and Jared were fortunate to be able to buy a home. And then we had Willow. She was in both our daughters' weddings, a friend from college of Kayla's. She was going to live with us and interned for the summer. So she took that room. And then Michael and Anna were able to buy a house. And then Willow went back, so it's just Kimberly, but that lasted for a week. Then we had another young couple, Maddie and Isaiah. Maddie was in both our girls' weddings and literally from kindergarten knew Kayla. She's over at her house. She's like family too. And Isaiah also, we've known the Alsoms forever. Yeah. He's been on Mexico trips with us.
Totally.
So then we had a chapter with them in there. So it's only the last few months where really September, where John, my son-in-law, he's now an electrical lineman.
Okay.
And got an apprenticeship. So that's
he's on the road,
it's
probably.
a big deal. Oh, yeah. Well, that's as a journeyman, you're on the road. You got to do 4 years of your apprenticeship. So that's hard to just get in because they prepare you one-on-one. Yeah. I'm learning about union and a lot of this stuff that I didn't really know. But yeah, so he got scheduled in southeast Wyoming and 60 miles one way to groceries.
Really?
So I drove Kimberly out there a couple months later, spent a few days. That was really sweet, kind of seeing it, and then came back. Karen was able to visit this spring and spend some time with them. And through a lot of prayer, God answered their prayer. They're now just south of Salt Lake in Utah, 30 restaurants within 5 or 10 miles. They live on a lake. What an answer to prayer. And only in hindsight, I think they made it through that year, depending on Christ and podcasting and things, but no community outside of that, really. And God now has them in a much, much better place. They're literally living at a lake resort.
Well, you know what? I think had God not taken them through that season, they couldn't appreciate where they're at. And I think as all of our lives, we all have that. We all remember where we started out, broke. Yep. We couldn't rub 2 nickels together.
Yeah. 2 nickels. You had 2 nickels?
Well, maybe it's 2 pennies. I don't know. Yeah. But now the joy, looking back to that was actually joyful.
Yeah. Because
we had to rely on the Lord and each other, and that's it.
Yeah. So we were just able to go visit them just weeks ago. Yeah. And then back to Kayla. Yeah, we're anticipating, because it's first week of August, but it could be any day. Right? When you're T-minus 3 weeks, you know how that stuff goes. So, we're just ready to, they got their go bags, and so do we, for that. And Kimberly will be able to come back and spend some time post-birth, probably a couple weeks. So, yeah, it's like you say, come on.
We'll be waiting and watching and praying. So,
amen.
Well, Mark, let's wrap up, man. This has been a really good podcast.
Good.
I know you well, but I think having the community know you, and you know lots of people, but I find that a lot of people know people on surface levels.
Right.
I know Mark's a financial guy. I know he's married. Yeah. And I think he's a Christian guy. But really, who is Mark? And I think that's what this podcast is all about, is
awesome.
Really helping you get to share your story, and the good and the bad. Life isn't perfect. And I think people often go look at a guy like Mark and go, man, your life's just been perfect. Like, you just don't know.
Let's go to coffee. Let's go to coffee and talk, right?
I've had some great conversation, but that's life.
That is. And buddy, it's a privilege to be on here. Keep fighting the fight with this podcast. You're doing a great job.
Well, it's God's platform. I just happen to be the guy he said to do it until he says not to. So I'm going to keep doing it. And really, it's getting to share your story and the way God's working in your life. So it's really
praise Him.
Pretty cool. So, well, hey, we might have you on here again. We'll give it a year and have maybe more grandkids and see where that's going. So
that'd be a privilege. Yeah.
Cool. Well, thanks for being here this Friday. We appreciate you listening every week. It is a privilege to share the gospel, because that's what we do. It's what we're here for. If one person comes to know Christ, that's good.
Yeah.
Hopefully more do, but we appreciate people like Mark. And if you ever want to be on the podcast, you want to share your story, reach out to me. I'd love to have a conversation with you. My phone number, which I don't normally give, is 503-851-8031. Text me, call me. I do want to talk with you. So thanks for being here. We'll see you next week. Thank you so much. Thanks, Mark.
Thanks.